Imagine being told that the very people meant to understand the human mind were the ones trying to break it. Throughout the 20th century, psychologists, doctors, and governments began asking a very dangerous question. How far could the human mind be pushed before it would collapse? Their answer came from experiments conducted in orphanages, prisons, military hospitals, and university laboratories. Some of these studies, they said, were meant to cure illness. Others were meant to understand depression, and some were meant to change who a person fundamentally was. But in each case, the line between research and cruelty disappeared quickly. Tonight, we're looking at 4 disturbing experiments that attempt to reshape the human mind and the mad doctors behind them.
I walk through silence, thick and cold, where shadows drift and time grows old. No voice to call, no path to take, just fog and fear with every ache. Souls in the fog.
Our first tale of woe begins with a simple theory about speech. A theory that would lead researchers into an orphanage in Iowa and leave children permanently scarred. In 1939, speech pathologist Wendell Johnson worked at the University of Iowa. Johnson had struggled with stuttering since his own childhood. His personal experience led him to develop a theory. What if stuttering wasn't caused by a physical defect, but by a psychological pressure? Johnson believed that children might develop speech disorders simply by being told something was wrong with the way that they spoke. To test this idea, he assigned the project to his grad student, Mary Tudor. The experiment began in January 1939 at the Iowa Soldiers' Orphans' Home in Davenport, Iowa. The orphanage housed children who had lost parents during the Great Depression. 22 children were selected for the experiment. Some of them already had minor speech problems. Others spoke normally. The children were divided into 2 groups. One group received positive reinforcement, and whenever they spoke, Tudor praised them and reassured them their speech was improving. But the second group, they experienced something very different. Those children were told that their speech was defective. Tudor warned them that they were developing serious speech problems. She told them that they needed to stop talking unless they were absolutely sure that they could speak correctly. That is definitely cruel. Each mistake was criticized, every hesitation pointed out, and gradually the children began to change. Some became afraid to speak at all. Others began hesitating over every word. Children who had spoken normally began developing speech anxiety. The experiment ended after several months, but its effects didn't end there. Several participants later described a lifelong fear and embarrassment around speaking. The research itself remained largely hidden for decades. When historians later uncovered it, they gave it a name that captured the outrage that surrounded the experiment. They called it the Monster Study. And that experiment showed how fragile the human mind can be. And another would try to break it completely. While the Monster Study explored how criticism could alter human behavior, one psychologist wanted to understand something even darker. Because why the hell not, right? But we're here already. This creature crawled from the depths of hell's psychology department and wanted to know whether depression itself could be created in a laboratory. In the 1950s, psychologist Harry Harlow conducted groundbreaking research at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, my home state. Depths of frozen hell. Story checks out. Harlow studied emotional bonding in rhesus monkeys. His early experiments involved separating infant monkeys from their mothers and giving them artificial replacements. One surrogate mother was made from wire and provided milk. Another was covered in soft cloth but provided no food. The monkeys overwhelmingly chose the mother that was made of cloth. The research demonstrated something psychologists had never fully understood before, and that's that comfort and emotional connection could be more important than their basic survival needs. I really feel like they could have just surveyed a bunch of people, but that's not convoluted enough to be scientific, I guess. So by the late 1960s, Harlow's focus shifted. He became interested in one of the most devastating human conditions, clinical depression. Harlow believed depression might be caused by extreme social isolation. To test that theory, he designed a device he called the Pit of Despair. Dude really could have at least tried not to make it sound like what it is. This chamber was constructed from steel and shaped like an inverted pyramid. And its walls sloped inwards so nothing inside could climb out. The bottom contained a mesh floor. Once a monkey was placed inside, it couldn't even see any other animals. There was no social contact, no companionship, just solitude and isolation. Young rhesus monkeys were placed into the chamber for periods ranging from 30 days to several months. The results were almost immediate. Within days, the monkeys stopped exploring. They sat motionless in the corners. Some rocked back and forth continuously. Others wrapped their arms around themselves and refused food. Over time, the animals displayed behaviors that closely resembled severe human depression. Even after being removed from the chamber, many monkeys never fully recovered. Some became socially withdrawn for the rest of their lives. Others became aggressive or unable to interact normally with other monkeys. The experiment shocked many observers. Critics argued the suffering inflicted on the animals was far too great. But Harlow defended his work, believing it revealed important truths about mental illness. The Pit of Despair became one of the most controversial experiments in the history of psychology. Yet, while Harlow was isolating animals in a laboratory, another experiment was unfolding inside a prison in Philadelphia. And this one involved human subjects. In the mid-20th century, a prison in Pennsylvania became the site of one of the largest human experimentation programs in American history. Its subjects were inmates. Its goal was medical research, and its lead scientists saw the prison population as an unlimited testing ground. In 1951, dermatologist Albert Kligman visited Holmesburg Prison in Philadelphia. Kligman worked at the University of Pennsylvania. At the time, Holmesburg housed thousands of inmates. Many of them were serving long sentences. When Kligman walked into the prison, he later described seeing something unexpected. Rows of inmates standing shirtless, hundreds of exposed backs. He later wrote that the site looked like acres of skin. To Kligman, the prison represented an ideal research environment, a controlled population, easily monitored, and willing to volunteer for experiments in exchange for money. That's an ethically questionable way to go. Prisoners were offered payments ranging from a few dollars to several $100s. Inside the prison economy, that money is significant. And soon hundreds of inmates began participating in these experiments. Over time, the program expanded dramatically. Researchers began from testing cosmetics, shampoos, deodorants, pharmaceuticals, and chemical compounds. Most experiments involved applying chemicals directly to a prisoner's skin. The patches were placed along their backs. Each patch contained a different substance. Sometimes dozens of chemicals were tested on a single prisoner at a time. One of the most controversial experiments involved exposure to dioxin. And this is a chemical later associated with the herbicide that we know as Agent Orange. Inmates had the chemical applied to their skin in concentrated doses. Some developed painful lesions. Others developed severe acne-like eruptions that left permanent scars. Several participants later reported burning sensations that lasted for days. One former participant, Edward Anthony, later described how inmates lined up for experiments because the payments allowed them to access the commissary. Over the years, the research program expanded beyond cosmetics and dermatology. The prison hosted experiments funded by pharmaceutical companies and government agencies. And Holmesburg eventually became one of the largest prison research programs in the United States. But public attitudes toward human experimentation began changing in the early 1970s. Investigations exposed unethical research practices across the country. By 1974, the United States government banned most medical experimentation on prisoners. The Holmesburg experiments had come to an end, but the damage done to participants remained. And far from Philadelphia, another program was unfolding in secret. one designed to change something even more fundamental than speech or skin. It was designed to change identity itself. This one's a rough ride. In apartheid-era South Africa, the military believed it could correct human sexuality through psychiatry. The program that followed would later become known as one of the most disturbing abuses of medicine in modern history. Beginning in the early 1970s, the South African Defense Force operated a controversial psychiatric program. The program would later be called the Aversion Project. Its central figure was psychiatrist Aubrey Levin. Levin was born December 18, 1938 in Johannesburg, South Africa. He trained as a psychiatrist and eventually joined the South African military medical system. During the apartheid era, homosexuality was considered unacceptable within the armed forces. They just weren't fucking having it. Young soldiers suspected of being gay could be reported by commanding officers or fellow recruits. Once identified, they were often transferred to psychiatric treatment units. The most infamous location was Ward 22 at one military hospital in Pretoria. There, patients were subjected to aversion therapy. The procedure involved placing electrodes on the patient's body. They were shown photographs of nude men. If signs of arousal were detected, technicians delivered electrical shocks. Their goal was to create a painful association with same-sex attraction. After the shocks, patients were shown images of women while receiving positive reinforcement. But the treatments did not stop there. Some patients were subjected to hormone injections. Others were given very heavy sedatives. Several were reportedly subjected to chemical castration treatments. By the late 1970s, some cases escalated even further. Reports later emerged that certain patients underwent forced gender reassignment surgeries. And the exact numbers remain uncertain, but later investigations suggested dozens of individuals were affected. And many former patients later described long-term psychological trauma, and who wouldn't with that kind of inhumane treatment? The program continued through much of the 80s, and only as apartheid began collapsing did the program finally end. Years later, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission investigated the allegations. The Aversion Project became a symbol of how medicine and politics could combine to produce devastating consequences. These 4 experiments took place in different locations: an orphanage in Iowa, a university lab in Wisconsin, a prison in Philadelphia, and a military hospital in South Africa. But they all shared one disturbing idea: the belief that the human mind could be reshaped through pressure, isolation, or pain. Each experiment revealed something about human psychology, but they also revealed something about the people conducting this research. Mostly that they're really bad people. Because the most unsettling questions may not be what these experiments did to their subjects. It may be why the researchers believed that they were justified in doing them at all. History remembers these studies today not as breakthroughs, but as warnings. Warnings about what can happen when curiosity, authority, and power combine and go unchecked. And how easily the line between understanding the mind and breaking it can disappear. So now we see why this episode had a trigger warning. That was a lot. Didn't enjoy researching that one. Tell me what you thought down in the comments. And I got a second one, a part 2 to this, that's got some more experiments. Psychologists are some strange and deeply troubled people. Well, we will see you guys in the next episode. In the meantime, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, leave us some comments. It helps out a lot. Thanks for watching.